Hey. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Buteyko breath workshop on Zoom, live from Paros with Mrs. Carol Baglia. She is a registered respiratory therapist, certified asthma educator, Buteyko breathing educator, and trainer. She has been coaching clients since 2003 and has experience working with a variety of breathing difficulties such as sleep apnea, COPD, anxiety attacks, and much more. Carol will share her knowledge and how to optimize breathing for improvements in health and prevention of many common ailments. Carol is passionate about helping others to breathe easier, and I had the pleasure working with Carol in private for several months. Welcome, Carol. I'm gonna share the screen. Let's see. Okay. I think now you can share your screen, correct? Is this correct or no? Or should I make you?
It says it's still disabled.
Oh yeah, here, 1 second. See now?
Yes, that did it.
Perfect. All right, I'm gonna switch off my video here and I will make you, oh yeah, okay, perfect. All right.
So I came to Buteyko. I used to do accounting work, and in my 40s, I started having all these breathing difficulties and came to learn that I had asthma. And I couldn't understand that because I ate right, exercised, and thought, you know, where's this coming from? But I would answer this question, that I just never considered that the way that I was breathing could be affecting my health like that. And it does, though, because it's the foundation for everything else that happens in your body, because we're doing it all the time with taking over 20,000 breaths. So there's many aspects to breathing, like how much you're breathing and where in your body you're breathing. And if you're not doing it quite right, then nothing else in your body can work right either. So my question is, let's just look at one aspect about how much you're breathing. What do you do that tends to make you breathe more? Now, Monica, I don't know if you've muted people, but that they
no, they're not muted. They can.
Okay. They can interact with me, which is great.
Yes.
So what would tend to make you breathe bigger or more, things that you typically do?
Walking up steps. Walking up steps.
Physical activity, absolutely. And so here I'll help a little bit. Some things are emotions, like whether you're really angry or you're frightened or sad, or there's a bunch of things there that can affect your breathing. And also we talked about activity, the physical exercise. Now, the next one is food. And many people don't realize this, that everything you eat affects the way that you breathe, some things more than others. And environmental factors such as elevation, temperature, pollution, weather, long, broad categories of things that can affect your breathing. Entertainment examples would be like listening to fast music and breathing with the rhythm. So there are a lot of things that if you're just leaving your breathing on autopilot and assuming it's fine and letting it do anything it wants to, that could be really aggravating your breathing, making it bigger, stronger, harder, faster. Now, what things do you do that would have the opposite effect, that would make your breathing slower or less?
Also drugs. Drugs, I think. Medication.
Right. So you're right that when we like deliberately and consciously do things that will back it off, calm it down. So there are some exercises that coordinate the breath with the movement, and like a relaxation massage. And the opposite of eating, of course, is not eating, which would help slow the breathing down. So there are some environmental things like aromatherapy that can soothe the breathing, but of course, most odors are very stimulating to the breathing. Only things like lavender or chamomile would be calming. And so what we find is that every day we're all affected by what I call these E factors. I conveniently try to make the topic on the faster more for E for excessive to compare to things that do the opposite, which is calm your breathing down. And most people daily, though, aren't doing things in the slower or less column. So what happens over time is that our breathing keeps going up a notch. The volume control just keeps increasing. And then what happens when our breathing gets more than necessary, more than appropriate for our bodies? So one of the features of breathing is the number of breaths per minute. And what do you think would be the right answer for this question? C is actually the right answer. Yes, and sometimes I do have people count their breaths for a minute before answering this, but there are two factors, it's not only just the size of each breath, but it's the number of breaths. Those two things combined is what we're really looking at. It's called the minute ventilation, how much air you breathe, that you move in and out of your body within a minute's time. And so here's just a little chart to get us starting to understand what we consider normal breathing. So it should be steady and smooth and silent and slow, and of course diaphragmatic and nasal. So those are the main things that we're looking at for healthy breathing. And many people, when their breathing starts to go off track, they think, well, if I just make my lungs stronger, if I just work at it, if I try harder, things will get better. And that's not true. Your breathing should only use about 2% of your energy. That's hardly anything. It should be very subtle, discreet, invisible, effortless. And when people overbreathe, that's what often causes a health crisis, where people will crash. And in doing resuscitation, they figured out a lot of things, with people being leery of contamination issues. They stopped doing the mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and they just did the chest compressions. And that's what they even teach now with CPR, because they realized that was working better, because people would be overzealous in giving breaths. And what caused the person to have the crisis in the first place was their breathing went berserk. And then they're trying to revive them by doing the same thing, thinking, oh my gosh, they're not breathing, breathe. breathe, breathe. And they realized that wasn't working. And what works much better is by doing the chest compression, you're actually moving the rib cage in and out by pushing down on it. And that is making air go in and out. And that's all they needed, was that little bit to resuscitate them appropriately. So what we're finding is that overbreathing, or what we call chronic hidden hyperventilation, is epidemic because there's so much stressors to our body. And any kind of stress can stimulate your breathing, make you breathe more than is appropriate for the needs of your body. And so this shows what happens when we are in this fight or flight response. When you're breathing more than necessary, the red flags go up in your body, and it says, danger, danger, something's about to happen, get ready. And so it prepares your body for this physical feat to either run away or fight with all your might. So you can see that would make sense. Your breathing increases. And what turns this on is if you're breathing even 10% more than you're supposed to be. So let's say you're breathing 11 breaths a minute, and what you should be breathing is only 10 breaths. That's 10% more. You start activating this to some level. So it's not a complete on or off switch. It's any shades or degrees that this starts turning on in your body. And notice that the blood goes mostly to your large muscles. That's what you'd be using to run away or fight. And your immune system is kind of put on the back burner along with your digestion, because it's kind of all hands on deck. We've got to save my life in this moment. So when that's happening, we call it chronic hidden hyperventilation. Your body ends up dealing with all of these, not all of these, but some of these symptoms can happen, such as hypertension, asthma, chronic fatigue, Raynaud's syndrome, immune problems like lupus, skin problems like eczema, a lot of digestive problems like irritable bowel or GERD, reflux, and things with your heart, and of course a lot with your head too, where you have poor concentration, loss of memory, stuff like that, anxiety. And we call this the fat folder syndrome, because people will go to their doctors complaining, this is happening, that's been happening, and they're sent for all kind of testing to try to figure out why they're having these symptoms. So their medical folder gets bigger and bigger, and they really can't come up with an answer oftentimes onto what's behind these symptoms. And so the breathing affects way more than just your respiratory system. It hugely impacts your cardiac, your mental, your digestive, your nervous system. This is just a sample of some of the symptoms that people may experience from having dysfunctional breathing. And this is just another way that I listed some of the ailments that people have. And they often blame it on other things than the way they're breathing, because again, it's not common knowledge how the breath is so integral to everything that's happening. Now, fortunately, there was a book that came out, this breath book by James Nestor. And it was on the New York Times best-selling list. And he subtitles it "The New Science of a Lost Art." And because he was a journalist, he did a lot of research into his book. And he's trying to make the public more aware of how the way that they're breathing is so important. And when you think about it, what is breathing? It's bringing the external environment deep inside your body, and it's going directly into your bloodstream. And it has to go through this intricate maze where it's branching just like a tree. Your airways keep subdividing, downsizing until it's about the size of a hair. That's how tiny the little tube is that the air is going through. And when you can't catch your breath, when you ran up that flight of stairs and you're heaving and all of that, it's because you're affecting the system of how your body gets air in and out. It's just like sucking through a paper straw and the walls of the tube collapse and the air isn't able to get through all those tiny little places that it needs to go, because it's only at the very end of those airways that the gas exchange occurs, that the little air sac is that will give you oxygen. And speaking of that, then, how is it that your body regulates your breathing anyways? Like, what is your body looking at in order to decide when to take a breath? A lot of people assume it's oxygen because everybody knows we need oxygen to live, and that maybe, we used up so much and that's what's triggering your body to say, go get more air, take a breath in. But in reality, carbon dioxide is what your body is monitoring in order to decide when it should breathe. And the carbon dioxide is made by your body, and that is the purpose of your breathing, is to regulate, to maintain the right amounts of that in your system. There's hardly any in the atmosphere, despite global warming threats and all of that. It's way less than what you need to keep in your body at all times. And the reason oxygen isn't important is because there's usually about 21% oxygen in sea level atmosphere. And when your body takes in a breath, you exhale back out about 17% oxygen. That's how we were able to do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Like, you have enough oxygen in your exhale to give to breathe into someone else. So that's why oxygen is usually not a factor. Your body usually doesn't have to worry about oxygen. It's plentiful. There's very rare situations where there would be a lack of oxygen that your body would have to worry about that. So it's very easy for your body to transfer and get the oxygen out of the air into your blood. But when you breathe rapidly or big, you're giving up your carbon dioxide too quickly. You're depleting it. And Dr. Buteyko called carbon dioxide the drug of all drugs, or the vitamin of all vitamins, for its importance in the body. It's critical to have the right amount available at all times. And when we overbreathe, when we permit our breathing to be powerful, then we're depleting that. We're giving that up too quickly. And we're going to look at this a little bit more. Carbon dioxide is regulating the pH, the acid alkaline basis of your blood. And it's also what your body monitors in order to decide when to take a breath. And when you don't have enough, it's going to cause the smooth muscle to constrict in your body. And your smooth muscle is around all your the tubes and pipes in your body, such as your airways, your circulation, your digestion. Those are some of the main areas where this would therefore cause symptoms for the person. If you lack carbon dioxide, it could cause hypertension if it's constricting around your blood vessels. And of course, asthma, if it's your airways where the smooth muscle is tightening because of lack of carbon dioxide. And the digestive problems, we said, those are all kind of things like reflux and irritable bowel and that. So carbon dioxide is really important for the way that we're breathing and maintaining our pH, which should be slightly alkaline at 7.4. So if you are able to maintain 6% carbon dioxide in your alveoli, which are those millions of little air sacs in your lungs, that would be ideal for your body. Now, what would happen if you just stop breathing? If you say, that's it, I'm not breathing, I'm holding my breath, what's your body going to do about it? Well, what I'm looking for is that if you have really strong willpower, your body will take you down. You will pass out and resume breathing. And while you're not breathing, your carbon dioxide is building up in your body because every cell in your body produces carbon dioxide. It's just a byproduct of cellular respiration, of you having energy to exist. And some people would say, oh, well, you're going to die. And we all have this innate survival instinct, and your body will try everything. All the alarms will go off and your body will try everything to get you to resume breathing. So no one has been able to commit suicide by holding their breath. Now, if we go the other direction here and we breathe powerfully, which is many people have been taught that, like take big deep breaths and flush out all that old stale air and breathe and that if I gave you all a bag of balloons and said there was going to be some grand prize for who could blow them all up the fastest, how is that going to make you feel, all that heavy duty breathing?
Lightheaded.
Right, lightheaded, dizzy, maybe even nauseous, fatigued. There's a bunch of different things that will happen. And what you're doing is you're blowing out your carbon dioxide quicker than you can produce it. And you're developing respiratory alkalosis. And when that happens, depending on a person's genetics, they can either be having an anxiety attack, an asthma attack, or they're just going to pass out again. So your body has to maintain a narrow range with this pH in order to exist. Now, would you consider snoring pretty heavy duty breathing? Like, huge deep breaths and all of that. So it's like blowing up that bag of balloons. It's very powerful. And so what happens eventually is your body reaches that point where it says, uh-oh, doesn't want to cross that line. It knows that the cells are going to start dying. It's survival instinct kicks in. It says, better stop breathing or else. You're breathing way too excessively. You're messing up your pH range, so the body stops breathing. you have an apnea. So it doesn't breathe, doesn't breathe, doesn't breathe. And instead of starting up at normal, it goes all the way to the other extreme, where again, the body says, uh-oh, better breathe or else. And because you've held your breath for so long, then the body does the, like the startling snorting catch up, and then it's breathing ridiculous again. And until it reaches where your body says, well, can't go there, stop breathing. So it goes through this terrible cycle of way over breathing, not breathing at all, way over breathing, not breathing at all. And that's why people that have sleep apnea are exhausted in the morning when they get up, even though you feel like, oh, well, I heard you sleeping, you were snoring and keeping the rest of us awake. Like, it sounded like you were sleeping, but it's not a restful sleep. And they've been trying to save their life all night long. And yes, it's very difficult for them. So the way to stop that again is to keep your body at the normal level of CO2 and your pH stable. That's what would be ideal. So what I want to ask is, how, when you take in a breath and your blood is all loaded with oxygen and it starts circulating around throughout your body, how does the oxygen know where to get off? Does anyone have any ideas on how that happens? Well, I will tell you what it's looking for is an elevated amount of carbon dioxide. Because like if I'm moving my arm back and forth here, there's going to be a buildup of carbon dioxide. Again, it's a byproduct of me having the energy to move my arm, that cellular respiration. So that's how your body knows, wow, the work's happening there in the arm. That's where we need more oxygen to fuel that. So the carbon dioxide provides the right chemistry for your body to get the oxygen molecule off your blood. It's very easy to get oxygen on your blood. It's a chemical bond. It has a very strong attraction. So the hemoglobin grabs those oxygen molecules, and it's going to take something special to make them let go, to release off your blood. Because if you think about it, what else would prevent the oxygen once it leaves your lungs from just dissipating willy-nilly anywhere, whether you need it or not? It would all just come off in your left leg. And like, how would there be any oxygen left on your blood by the time it got back to your heart if your body didn't have a way of knowing where it was needed the most and have a way to release the oxygen at that point? So that's really important to have that understanding, because breathing isn't just about the gas exchange in your lungs. It's more importantly the gas exchange at the cellular level. How do you get that oxygen to the places in your body where it's needed the most? And so when we were talking about when you're blowing up the bag of balloons and you might feel lightheaded and dizzy, or that, is that because your brain has too much oxygen or not enough oxygen? What would make you lightheaded and dizzy when you're breathing powerfully? It's lack of oxygen, right? Because this is the paradox here, that the oxygen is stuck to your blood because you don't have the carbon dioxide. You breathed out your carbon dioxide so much, your body never finds an elevated amount. There's not a way to get the oxygen off your blood. So it's just going round and round. And that's why people that are having panic attacks and they're not getting the oxygen to their brain, that's why it's pushed the panic button, like, need oxygen, need oxygen. They breathe into the brown paper bag to rebreathe their carbon dioxide so that they can get some oxygen released back to their brain. So that is something that is essential to understand about your breathing and how and why you want to have adequate carbon dioxide so that you can have the right pH, and therefore you can have the oxygen available too. Because when you don't have oxygen available and you're doing anaerobic respiration, it's way less efficient, way less energy production. And for instance, your body has all these compensatory measures too, and it will try to adjust the pH that the dysfunctional breathing is causing by dumping bicarbonate. So people that snore usually have to frequent the bathroom at night. And they're blaming it on, getting older or drinking too much fluids or something. But it's the way that they're breathing, typically, that is their body trying to adjust and correct all of that dysfunctional breathing. So this is for people that have medical background or science background that want to know what I'm talking about, how your body takes food and oxygen to create the energy, and the carbon dioxide and water are byproducts. And there's where you can see the hydrogen ion, which is your pH. Your body is constantly shuffling those molecules around where it's needed to try to maintain homeostasis. So this is about, again, having the right ingredients. And it all boils down to this, that sick people breathe more because being sick is a stress to their body. And it just snowballs from there, the symptoms that they have. And that breathing properly can also eliminate a lot of things that people are experiencing, because dysfunctional breathing causes your body to give you grief to try to correct it itself. And if you have the knowledge to breathe properly, then your body doesn't have to try to do it for you. So a typical healthy breathing person breathes about 10 breaths a minute, a half a liter per breath. And that's what they would send a ventilator for if they had to breathe for you. And then they would test your arterial blood and tweak it from there if they needed to, because there are a lot of factors that would affect that, such as age, sex, size, etc. But typically what they're looking for in your blood work would be 40 millimeters of mercury of arterial carbon dioxide. That equates to that 6% that I mentioned would be ideal amount to have in your lungs. That's how it's measured, though, in your blood, is this 40 millimeters. And we all have a respiratory control center in the back of your brain that is looking at this. But what can happen over time, if you allow all those E factors to keep your breathing stimulated above and beyond what is appropriate, your body just gets used to that, because you keep doing it, you permit it, you're letting your breathing be on autopilot to do anything it wants. And there are so many stimulus to your breathing that make it more. So this 40 millimeters, it ends up decreasing the trigger point. And this is what happened to me. I was having asthma attacks because my carbon dioxide was getting down to 30 millimeters instead of being at 40 millimeters. And so what we wanted, and you can see how you're breathing so much faster then, because every time my carbon dioxide went beyond this point, my body was saying breathe and getting rid of anything additional. Where it should have done is waited till my CO2 had built up way beyond here to say breathe. So it's kind of like the faster you breathe, the lower your carbon dioxide goes, because it's triggering way sooner and it's not letting it stay. Like, this is the minimal balance you should always have in your system before it gets rid of the excess. And so it is possible to reset your respiratory control center to trigger back at the right level, where you have always that 40 millimeters in your body at all times and your body chemistry is appropriate. So basically what it is, Buteyko is putting people on an air diet. And just like food, there is an appropriate amount of air that we should be consuming. And when we consume too much, one of the things that can happen is the asthma. 1 in 4 people have the potential genetically to develop asthma, but only 1 in 10 people actually have symptoms of asthma. And it can happen at any age because it depends when you're breathing too aggressively. I had worked with a gentleman who was in his 80s that developed it because he had a respiratory infection and a lot of congestion. And he had it in his head that if I could just cough this up, if I could just get this out of my lungs, I would be better. So he kept doing all these forceful exhales and coughing, and trying to get rid of the congestion. But what it was getting rid of was his carbon dioxide. And so as that went down, it reached that critical threshold where the smooth muscle just closed up, and then he started suffocating. So again, your body has these, what we consider natural defense mechanisms to protect it from you, from your breathing behavior. So there's all kind of treatments that they have, but again, if you breathe properly, you don't have to experience this. Your body doesn't have to intervene to try to protect itself from the way that you're breathing. So this is a busy chart. I don't need to go into detail in this. I just wanted to explain some of these things because people do actually die from asthma, and it is very preventable. It is avoidable. People don't have to suffer from this if they learn how to breathe properly. That is the main message here. And because all of these things that are happening is just the body trying to protect itself from the way that you're breathing. The more that you breathe, the air that you breathe, the more mucus your body's going to make, because that's its job, is to clean the air. And of course, the more you breathe, the more aggravated your body can get, because air is very harsh and irritating. And if you're breathing in and out, in and out, in and out, it's like doing this, and this gets all swollen and aggravated. And so again, it's going to shrink those tubes because it's of that. So this just shows a normal open airway versus one that has smooth muscle tightening, swelling, and excess mucus. And that's why you're suffocating. You feel like you can't breathe. And so what we're saying is that there really aren't, we don't blame triggers for having asthma or breathing difficulties or allergies or things like that. It's the breathing behavior that is causing the problems. And one of the breathing behaviors that's really essential is to breathe only through your nose, in or out, all the time. That helps to retain the right amount of carbon dioxide in your body. And most people don't realize how critical that is. But there was a book written back in 1870 called Shut Your Mouth and Save Your Life. And it was written by George Catlin. He's a famous American artist. His portraits are in our national museums. And this is actually one of his. And he was amazed that the American Indians, he did a lot of the warriors where they were these huge, big, strong, buff guys. And they looked like the epitome of health. They were vibrant, thriving. And he was curious and said, like, what are you doing? How is it that you guys are so healthy? And the settlers were scroungely and sickly and had all these ailments. And he went around and interviewed over 40 tribes. And that's the conclusion he came to. They knew the importance of nose breathing only. It was the job of the Indian mother to watch over the infant, as in this picture, and make sure that the baby never developed the habit of mouth breathing. That her job was to push the little chin up, pinch the lips together. Back then, they knew it was survival because we were hunted and hunter. And the only way to be safe was to blend in with the scenery. No one could hear your breathing. No one could see your breathing. And that's why the Indians were so successful at ambushing too. You know, they could sneak up on anything and not disturb and give away their locations. So this is a skill that still should be taught, that all breathing should only be done with the nose in or out. And because the nose has all these special features to prepare the body for the air. And that's the purpose of your lungs too, is we have our own internal atmosphere that's different than the air out here. Our lungs have to create the proper atmosphere for our breathing. And that's how even Dr. Buteyko, he was involved with the space program in Russia when they needed to figure out for the cosmonauts how they should be breathing in outer space. And he had to figure out first on Earth, what is the ideal breathing? And even if you look at other animals, you will see that they know the importance of breathing with their nose. Any animal that sweats will only breathe unless it is sick and has some serious problems. So that's what we want to make sure, that you're using your nose, and it has all those special features we were talking about. So if your mouth is open though, air has to come in that way, and it bypasses, it's cold, dry, dirty, straight into your lungs. And again, you want to protect that, because whatever gets into your lungs goes right into your bloodstream. So that's why they're talking about creating these. I just saw vaccinations for COVID that are just nasal sprays, and there's other medications in that they're starting to use that as a form of dispensing. So one of the ways that Dr. Buteyko developed to try to measure your carbon dioxide is doing this breath hold time. And it's called a control pause or comfortable pause. And it's taking a gentle breath in, letting a comfortable amount of air out, and then stopping your breathing. Of course, keeping your mouth closed and waiting till your body gives you the signal it would like to breathe. So whenever it's hitting, what we're trying to measure is at what level your carbon dioxide is, when it's going to trigger to take that breath. And so you will feel either your diaphragm attempt to take the breath, you'll feel that muscle jerk, you will feel pressure, or you will feel like you need to fidget or move or kind of make yourself not breathe. When you reach any of those points, that's the signal to let go and resume breathing. And all we do is time how many seconds you can comfortably not breathe after an exhale, again, before your body starts to breathe again. So, Monica, do you have a way there to have people time, or have you done this in your classes?
Well, we doing the breath hold technique, the control pause, and I explained it the first day, and I said we could measure it. I mean, we could do it. I can just press a timer and all do it. Oh no, I can't do it. I can do it obviously. No, but they have it in their sheets, so they can always read and do that on their own in the morning. Okay,
so you're aware of this comfortable pause and what level you would like it to be at. And the way to get it in the right range is not by constantly doing a control pause. Think of it more as an evaluation. It's kind of like taking your temperature or your blood pressure. It's a measurement, and it's not therapeutic. Like, you wouldn't keep trying to hold your breath this way, thinking that it's going to make you hold it longer. That's not the way to improve your measurement. And the way to do it is the skills that Monica has been teaching you, with the short breath holds. And I don't know if she's been doing hibernation breathing with you, or just even a lot of the yoga that you're working on with the diaphragmatic breathing and the nasal breathing and those types of things. So I wanted to just give you some background understanding, because a lot of times the things that we are teaching people as far as the Buteyko exercises seem contrary to a lot of general knowledge that's out there. And so I think it really helps people to have that background knowledge or information about really why we are breathing. And again, James Nestor went into that even in his book too. He tried to go back as far in time as he could to find out about anything with breathing. And of course, it was in the yoga world where there were most references to it. But somehow over the eons, things have gotten distorted, and people haven't been following the original documents about the breathing. So This is just one of the techniques on nose clearing things. So what I can do now is I can open it up to any questions that you have. I think I have just a few minutes here. Did you guys learn something that you weren't aware of about how you, the importance of breathing and how it can cause different symptoms? And I know it was a little bit scientific. Hopefully it wasn't too difficult to understand. I know the slides are busy too, but they're mostly just prompts for me to cue me on what to cover.
Anyone has some questions? Yes.
This question might sound silly. Can you hear me?
Hold on, let me, I'm not hearing you as well. Hopefully you're hearing me. Let me turn my volume up so I can hear you better. Okay.
This question might sound silly, but you've mentioned how important it is to breathe through our nose. People tend to trim the hair in noses, how that affects breathing. Obviously, hair is natural filter.
Did you hear it?
No, it's like cutting out. It's, well, like echoing too. So
Okay, I will come a little bit closer. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, much better.
Joanna asked if when you cut your nose hair inside, if it affects your breathing.
You know, it filters.
Well,
If it
filters all
yeah,
the
yeah.
gases, etc.
The nasal hairs are there just as a filter system, you know, but you have more filtering too. It's there for a purpose, but I mean, obviously if they're sticking out and you want to just trim what's really visible, but I wouldn't trim the nasal hairs that actually are helping to protect your nose. I mean, think about the more air you breathe, the more garbage you're putting into your body, the more pollution, dust, pollen, germs, etc. And by breathing delicately, you are protecting your body much better. And yeah, the nasal hairs are just, again, one of the filters that your protection things that your body has. And so was that maze, creating that really difficult subdividing, branching, changing, downsizing. All of that is your body's attempts to keep things out of your blood system. And any other questions? I hope I answered that one okay for you.
Yeah. I have one.
You were talking earlier about the breathing exercise where you exhale and then you effectively are sort of holding your breath for a period of time before you need
Control pause, it's called.
control
Pause.
pause, the control pause.
Yes.
And what's the optimum length of control pause? Because you had a slide with different measurements, but I wasn't sure whether that was in seconds or not.
Well, it is in seconds, and the ideal range to maintain is 45 to 60 seconds. Now I'm going to ask you too, what is the Guinness Book of World Records for holding your breath for human?
Oh goodness.
6 minutes? 7?
I'd say maybe longer.
Divers, right?
Yeah, maybe like 15, 20, even 30 minutes, like the pearl divers, I don't know.
Yes, it's some ridiculous number. I think it was 22, but the point is, like, it's just a basic life skill. Think of when this will come in handy, that you could hold your breath for a minute just to get yourself out of a situation. If there's really bad fumes, chemicals, tar, you know, whatever, dust, if you're in a bad place. I mean, there's so many situations where it could really help your body out, because there's a lot of things, because your lungs are so, have all those tiny little nooks and crannies with all that, the way it's structured. When you do get something in there, it's very difficult to get it out. And especially if you're still over breathing. Now, even like free divers and those people, Navy SEALs, their breath hold time is at least 3 minutes. So we're just trying to get you to a normal range, and it's you know, nothing superhuman is what we're asking for, but it's just our lifestyle. There's so much stimulus to our breathing. It takes work to keep your breath hold time at that level, but it's well worth it for the benefits to your body to have it, because there's no other way you can get carbon dioxide other than regulating your breathing. It doesn't come in a pill or a shot or a surgery. And in this book that James Nestor wrote, he did a little experiment. He went and surgically had his nose blacked for a couple weeks. That's all he could tolerate, because he already had like a long list of all those symptoms I was showing you from dysfunctional breathing. And then he had it removed and did the breathing stuff to try to get his body back to a healthy point. So that was part of what's through this book, his experiment that he did with converting from a nose breather to a mouth breather and then reversing back. Now, what's interesting too is we all produce about 1 quart of mucus a day, and that's to help keep our lungs clean too. Now that's a lot of mucus, but we have this mucociliary escalator that's constantly riding the mucus up and out. And the goal is to trap any of those hazardous things onto the mucus, you know, it's sticky and all of that. And it rides up, and typically it gets to the back of your throat and you swallow it, and it usually goes unnoticed. So within 15 minutes, anything you breathe in should have worked its way up and out of your lungs if you're breathing properly. But when you're breathing really fast and forceful, of course, what are you doing? You're shoving that stuff back down in there. You're dehydrating it, so it's getting thicker, stickier, harder to move. It just sabotages your body's ability to try to keep your lungs clean and you from getting sick and having all these other issues. So there's a lot of benefits to taking those pauses and giving all of this a rest, because your breathing is 24/7. And you want to give it that little chance, a minute here, a minute there, to just rest and recover. So any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question, because that's usually something which I experience a lot with students of mine, or people are mentioning it. People are very reluctant to tape their mouth at night, and most of the things I hear in the beginning, it's like, I would be afraid that I would suffocate, I could not breathe. So I thought maybe you could just briefly, you know, share, you know, about that, because we didn't speak about that today.
So, you know, the importance of using your nose for breathing, and your body would prefer to do that. And it will keep that open if it knows that's the route that air has to come. And you can start by doing just a little tab of tape if you're nervous about taping all the way across. I still tape my mouth shut every night. I know I'm going to have an excellent night's sleep no matter what position I get into or what else is going on, by having my mouth sealed closed. And as you get more comfortable with it, and you also wear the tape even during the day, and you'll see that you can, you'll forget it's even there. And it's just a nice little reminder, like buttoning your lips closed. But your body at night isn't, if it has a problem with the tape, it will take it off in your sleep. You'll find it wrapped around your finger or stuck in your hair or somewhere else. Your body's not going to just lay there and say, oh, I can't breathe. Oh, well, that's the end of me. If for some reason something really does happen, that your nose does clog, it will wake up. Your body is not going to just stop. No one has ever died. Millions of people. I've been doing this for 20 years. It was very popular in Russia, where it originated, then in Australia, then went to England, in the US. We sell a ton of mouth tape, and no one has ever had a problem, died from using mouth tape. If anything, it's saved people's lives tremendously from keeping their mouth shut at night.
Thank you, Carol. Any other questions? No? Okay, I gotta switch on my video. Thank you so much for your time and for all the knowledge you shared. And I'm gonna include the information about Carol and how to reach her in the video, under the video, so people can reach her if they wanna work with her, or if you have more questions and you wanna reach out, so just that you know about that. Thank you so much, Carol.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
Yes, you too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.